Tight ends. We're talking about them next on the PHLY Eagles show. Fran Duffy, Zach Berman in studio. If the Eagles need a Dallas Goedert replacement, will it come in this draft? Let's find out. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. Bo Wulf, Fran Duffy, Zach Berman in studio as we get going with our position previews for the draft. We're starting with tight end. Fran, how you doing?
Doing great. It's this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm excited to dive deep into like one specific position and like really kind of get into like a really it's a deep group, one of the better position groups in this draft class.
Part of doing this exercise is I'm not so sure about that.
Really?
I mean, it's good. It's fine.
I would say, let me put it this way: it's deeper than definitely deeper than your typical tight end group.
Well, we'll get into it.
Okay.
I think there's a deepness. I don't know if there is like a middle ground that I love. Like, you know, we'll get into like, you know, if Jake Brenningstool is the number 5 tight end, like his profile's terrible, but he's fun to watch. We'll get into it. Zach, how you doing?
Doing great. Excited for the show. Thrilled to be talking about tight ends. I wish Matt Quinn was here.
I know.
But nonetheless, I listened to him as I was prepping for the show.
Oh, good.
So that he's here in spirit.
You can infuse his tight end expertise into this conversation.
Exactly.
Oh, it's good. Well, let's start with from an Eagles perspective, Zach. Obviously, we talked about Dallas Goedert on the show yesterday. How many turkeys would you put right now on Dallas Goedert is not on the Eagles next season?
Not on the Eagles. I would put 80 turkeys on him, not on the Eagles. I still think there's a chance that if the market doesn't generate, that he comes back. But if he's back, he's back on the Eagles' terms. He's not back on Dallas Goedert's terms. Yeah. And I think that's the distinction here that's important to note is I think as the Eagles go in, I could be wrong here, but I think as the Eagles are doing their planning, they're not planning on Dallas Goedert being part of the roster. It would be a good, a good happenstance or it would work out well if he returns, but he would have to return on their number, not on his number.
And so if they do move on from Dallas Goedert, how important do you think they would view replacing him in the draft? Or do you think that they would be okay with a Grant Calcaterra, Kylan Granson, Harrison Bryant trio at tight end moving forward?
Yeah, I think door number 3 there because I do think they would want to add someone in the draft. As we've discussed, they haven't really addressed this position during the past. Since Dallas Goedert, the only tight end they've selected was Grant Calcaterra. And sometimes when that happens, it's because like they make trades for other players that they haven't even done that, right? I know they trade for Alberto. But that was a late draft pick swap. They haven't really done any meaningful work at the position other than adding Grant Calcaterra. Jack Stoll gave them some solid years as an undrafted player. They've tried to play that game, but they haven't really signed anyone notable or drafted anyone besides Calcaterra. So I do think they'll want to infuse the pipeline. The reason I said door number 3 is because I don't think they would necessarily go into the draft saying we need to find the Dallas Goedert replacement for the lineup. I think they might think they can get by. Like you, I thought you had a great point when you were talking with Jamie about it and Devon yesterday, how they can view it like their third receiver is the third option in the passing game. Saquon's an option in the passing game. And that tight end it's a situational player, whether you have someone blocking, whether Grant Calcaterra, I think they think Grant Calcaterra is fine and can fill that role, but I don't think they feel they need a 1-for-1 Dallas Goedert swap.
Interesting. How about you, Fran? How important do you think it is in the next evolution of this offense?
I do think that you'd like to be able to add another guy into the pipeline there, just because it gets into the conversation, and you've made this point about making sure that you have like a blue chip talent on offense, knowing what's coming down the pipe. All right, all your money's going to be going to defense. If you're going to add it to offense, it's probably not going to be a receiver. maybe it's offensive line, but like it would be nice to kind of balance the books that way. Let's get a tight end in here that eventually you hope to sign to a second contract.
That's kind of how I feel too. Is that I know that they care so much about offense, right? They know that is the key to being successful in today's NFL. Yep. And so you've got AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. You've got your quarterback. You've got your running back for a couple of years, right, at an elite level. But Jahan Dotson, even if he is penciled in as your number 3 option in the receiving game this year, this is the final year of his rookie deal. If there is a place to add an actual like different element to the offense, it does feel like a young tight end would be that. Now, tight end is a position where Brock Bowers disproved it this year, but usually it's a position that requires a little bit of development. But I could see the Eagles thinking this is our place to add a potential difference maker. And so we'll get to the conversation in a few minutes, but I don't think it's crazy to think that maybe Colston Loveland is an option for them at 32.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, too, like this is a team that played the majority of their games this season without the regular season without Dallas Goedert. He had two IR stints. He had an IR stint last year. I'm pretty sure he had one the year before. Like he's missed a lot of time, so they've gotten a chance to look at what the offense looks like without paying him $14 million, without having him on the field.
Now, one of the beauties of Dallas Goedert for the Eagles over the past 5 years, or however you want to call it, is that he was able to do both, right? He is. I always loved that 2022 season because it was so simple to me, and it's such a beautiful story of when they were in 11 personnel, they were the best running team in football, and a lot of that was because of Dallas Goedert. And then when they went to 12 personnel, they were the best passing team in football because they got you big and they could throw on you, and a lot of that was because of what Dallas Goedert brought to the table. Do you think that it's important to have a guy who can do both, or would you be okay with sort of a Voltron situation, right, where you have your Jack Stoll type, you have your Grand Calcaterra type, and between the two of them, in the aggregate, you can recreate a Dallas Goedert?
My answer to that would be the reason why I've always felt that Dallas Goedert is a top 5 tight end in football is that those guys are hard to find. A guy that can impact the game as a blocker to the level that he does, and then also as a receiver to the level that he does. That's not common. And so I think it's probably unrealistic to say, even in this class, that they would be able to find someone that could be that 1-for-1 replacement. I do think that more than likely the tight end that you draft at the top is going to be more the pass catcher. And then if there's going to be a guy that can impact as a blocker, he's going to be lacking in the receiving element. So at the end of the day, it's probably more of like, all right, we need a group effort to replace the blocking element, and then you're hoping that somebody can develop into that primary pass catcher.
I think it's also worth pointing out that even if this is a slow developing position, relatively speaking, if you look at the 11 highest paid tight ends in the league based on average per year, only 2 of them were taken after day 2. And the sweet spot tends to be the second round, third round. Travis Kelce, second round pick. Mark Andrews, third round pick. Cole Kmet, second round pick. Pat Freiermuth up there. The only guys in the top 11 among tight ends who were day 3 picks were Dalton Schultz and George Kittle. Yeah. So typically, if you're finding someone who's not your number 2 tight end, you're looking the first 2 days of the draft. It's not at like offensive guard, running back, safety. Some of these undervalued positions, you tend to be able to find guys day 3. That hasn't been the case traditionally at tight end.
Yep. I think that's a fair point. Howie Roseman's draft history, as you mentioned, Zach, pretty meager at tight end. He's only drafted 5 tight ends,
but good hit
the
rate
course of over his career in charge. Cornelius Ingram in 2009, Zach Ertz, Clay Harbor, Dallas Goedert, Grand Calcaterra. That's it. Do you see any connective tissue there, Fran?
No.
Not really, right?
Across the spectrum, and to Zach's point, it's a pretty good hit rate. I think the Ingram, obviously, that was a separate deal just because of the injuries. But I would say that they've done a pretty good job of identifying talent there.
And I've made this point before. If Dallas Goedert moves on, this would be the first time in 25 years that they haven't had that guy waiting in the wings. When they had Chad Lewis, they drafted L.J. Smith as the second-round pick. L.J. Smith was waiting in the wings. Brent Selleck, who was a day 3 pick, Brent Selleck was waiting in the wings, took over for L.J. Smith. Brent Selleck was the tight end until Zach Ertz, who was a top 35 pick or top 36 pick. Then, obviously, Dallas Goedert, who was a second-round pick. So usually they've had a succession plan here. They've had the luxury of being able to move on and knowing who that guy is. That's not the case, and that is an anomaly under Howie Roseman. He's never had to look for a tight end like this.
one of my very early draft takes. I was very angry about the LJ Smith pick.
Interesting.
I thought there was a tight end that I liked more as a young fan.
Who was he?
It was the tight end from Tennessee that year, Jason Witten.
I love an origin story.
That one. Yeah,
very nicely done.
When Howie Roseman was a student at Florida, he was watching the draft in his apartment. Jed Fish, who's now the head coach at Washington, was his roommate at the time. And the New York Jets took Kyle Brady in the top 15, maybe top 10. I think he might have been the 8th overall pick. Fact check me if I'm wrong here. And Howie Roseman threw his notes. He was so upset about that pick. I don't know what that can tell us, that he didn't like Kyle Brady, but maybe
he hasn't drafted a virgin since.
And what's that?
don't make him repeat it.
Okay, but I just always thought that. So Kyle Brady was not Howie Roseman's type.
All right, here's how we're going to do this. We're going to go through Fran's top 10 tight ends, which you can find if you are a diehard on allphly.com. You also have access to the Eagles 100, which is paring down Fran's notes into a list of the players who we think the Eagles will be targeting. And then a few players on the back end. Because this is a deep group of tight ends, we might even go 14 deep on these guys. Each of us has an opportunity here to pound the table like Zach, put your stamp on a guy that is your guy. And so we will do that. And then also at the end, I want us to come to a consensus and work together to figure out who we think is the most likely Eagles draft pick from this group of tight ends, okay?
I like that.
Let's start at the top. Tyler Warren from Penn State. Not going to be a realistic option for the Eagles. However, let's talk about him. Fran, this is a very athletic player, but do you think he would be a top 20 caliber draft pick in a different draft?
I think he'd probably be borderline.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that when you're looking at Tyler Warren, a lot of people are going to make the comparison to Brock Bowers a year ago. To me, Brock Bowers was a clear better prospect. Now Warren is the better.
We're gonna ask Zach about this because no, seriously, you loved Bowers last year. Had a great rookie year.
You agree with that?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that Bowers just brought more as a pass catcher, and I think that's what elevates the value there. I do think Warren is a better blocker. He's not a dominant blocker. You know, people have compared him to George Kittle. Kittle was a killer at Iowa. Like, he would get after people, and then also tested like a freak show athlete at the combine. He just didn't have production. Tyler Warren was the focal point of the Penn State offense this past year. In the passing game, 30% target share for Tyler Warren this past year for the Nittany Lions. That's a near record at the tight end position. Athletically, I think he's quicker than fast. I don't think he's a true like field stretcher. I think that he's a solid route runner, not a great route runner. He caught a lot of balls this year, but he had major drop issues in 2023 and in 2022. Put a lot of balls on the ground. I think he only had one or two drops this past year for Penn State in his highest volume season. So that certainly was a good improvement there. And he's great with the ball in his hands. Just find ways to get him the ball. That's outstanding. It seems like he's going to go in the top 15, certainly top 14. My guess is going to be the top 10 at the end of the day. But yeah, that's how I feel about Warren.
I think I really like Tyler Warren. There's a lot to like there. The one thing I would kind of caution teams is don't get caught up in the other stuff, right? And what I mean by that is when Tyler Warren's described, he's often described as like this fun player because they used him in the backfield. They used him at quarterback.
This is like personal growth, I feel like, that we're witnessing in front of our eyes. This is usually what would sell you on a player like Tyler Warren.
I was afraid that you might have said that, and I didn't. Okay, I'm like was I not listening?
I can't believe what I'm hearing out of your mouth.
No, it's that because the reason I say that is because Penn State didn't really have other guys in that offense. Like they had to be, and their offensive coordinator, I'm gonna butcher the name, Andy Katayaki. Sorry, Andy K. Let's say Andy K.
Coach K.
Coach K. There you go, from Kansas. I'm sorry for butchering the name. I should have that. I always
don't say the name. Just say their offensive coordinator.
Yeah, their offensive. Yeah, fair. So he's really creative, and their wide receiver was underachieved relative to what I expected them to be. And so they found creative ways to get Tyler Warren the ball. Presumably, whatever offense Tyler Warren joins, they're not going to build the offense around Tyler Warren. So in that case, evaluate him the way you would be used in the NFL, which is as a pass catcher, as a blocker. Like if you can do a few, gimmicky plays, fine. That's a benefit. But don't draft him because he can do this stuff. Draft him for the stuff he does well otherwise.
Yeah, just looking at the profile of Tyler Warren, I'm predisposed to think, man, this is a stretch for a top 20 pick. A 23-year-old. He's got short arms. He didn't test. He certainly looks like a good athlete, but man, seems like a reach. But I watch him. I mean, he's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
He is really good. He actually reminds me a lot of a young Travis Kelce. The way that he is very adept at finding space in zones and some of that jokery type stuff. Sort of reminds me of do you remember the touchdown that Travis Kelce scored against the Eagles in 2017 on that sort of shovel pass, and he's like in the open field. There's a lot of that type of movement in Tyler Warren, and so in this draft, I probably wouldn't be the guy who's going to be the highest on him at the top of this draft, but man, I do think he's a really good player.
Yeah, I think that he is more likely to be in that tier of like TJ Hawkinson level of player as opposed to like that upper tier at the position at the end of the day.
Okay. All right. You know what? Let's take a break, hear from our sponsors, because I think coming up next is the major conversation we're going to have about Colston Loveland, who is not even your tight end 2, but is probably the most likely pick for the Eagles of these guys at 32. We're going to talk about him coming up next. What was that?
We'll get into it.
Okay. Anyway, I'm going to tell you about our friends at Timeline, because you know what? You got Tyler Warren, he's 23 years old. You got Colston Loveland, he's only 21. Who's going to live longer? I don't know. Probably whoever's shorter. But it could be whoever has more MitoPure in their body. What is MitoPure, you ask? Well, MitoPure works with the cells in your body to help reverse age-related decline. Benefits include increased strength, energy, and endurance. The good folks at Timeline have done 15-plus years of research and secured over 30 U.S. patents for their products. The cells in our body, oh baby, they're the building blocks of life. And Timeline is a supplement that works with those cells to help give you more energy, feel stronger during workouts, and preserve health and mobility as you start to age. MitoPure recharges your cells and helps your body's systems to work better. MitoPure is the only supplement clinically proven to rejuvenate health at the cellular level. MitoPure is shown to deliver double-digit increases in muscle strength and endurance without a change in exercise. Baby, that's a win. Get ready to be your best, most energized, most revitalized you. Right now, Timeline is giving you 10% off your order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/PHLY today to get started. That's timeline.com/PHLY. Codes are market specific. That's not for you to hear. Timeline.com/PHLY.
I was
it says must read verbatim. What are we doing?
I was working on my budget over the weekend, and I saw there's some financial blind spots there that need to be rectified, and that's why Monarch Money is a great app to have. Finances can be messy and confusing. Monarch Money acts like your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control so you can stop earning and start growing. It's more than your average budgeting app. Monarch Money is complete financial commands. It's a complete financial command center for your accounts, investments, and goals. Don't just manage your money. Start building wealth with 50% off your first year for our listeners, okay? And you can look in there and you can say you're wasting money on, sometimes it might be eating out. Sometimes it might be rideshare services. In my case, last month, it was eating out at restaurants, right? And so had to be careful there. And Monarch Money, they can track your spending. I'm always trying to save money, especially with summer coming up. I'm trying to go to baseball games with Reed, and that's where having a good grasp of your financial picture comes in. Start managing your finances to build a life that you actually want. Monarch makes managing money simple, even for busy lives. It was named the Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, and it's the finance tool that people actually love. Get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use code PHLY at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half of your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code PHLY.
All right. Colston Loveland from Michigan is your tight end 3, not your tight end 2, Fran. You are a little bit lower on him than consensus. He's 21 years old, has a good history of production, 6'6", 248, hits the arm length, did not test at the combine. Why are you a little bit lower than consensus?
Yeah, I think that my big thing, I think he's a little bit more one-dimensional that I would like to see. Look, if you're going to get recruited to play tight end for Jim Harbaugh, like you have to have a certain element of like, all right, stick-to-itiveness as a run blocker. Like I don't think that he's like a complete non-factor there. But at that size, with that body type, a lack of play strength, I think did show up on film. That does worry me. I don't think that he's going to be that kind of impact player. I also just didn't quite see like that explosive athleticism that I think others see, at the position. I don't think that he's a true mismatch, like move tight end type. I didn't see that level of dynamic ability. I think he could be a very reliable pass catcher, and I think that he does less after the catch than Tyler Warren does.
Sure.
So I think that he's more, kind of like what Dalton Kincaid has been. Now, Kincaid was a late first-round pick. I think that they are very similar archetypes of players. I just feel I think he's a solid player, but I wasn't like completely blown away by if he's because again, if he's going to be like that solid playmaking pass catcher. The reason why I have another guy ranked ahead of him, I think the other guy's a little bit more dynamic and can be more of a mismatch type player.
Well, let's talk about this. The tight ends over the past 10 years who have been drafted in this 20-pick range, okay? So from 23 overall to 42 overall. Okay. So both sides of where the Eagles are at 32, 10 of them. Evan Engram, probably a fine result. I mean, a little bit different type of player, obviously. Hayden Hurst, probably not a good result. We'll get to that. Dalton Kincaid, who you mentioned. If we're just going binary, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Okay. David Njoku, probably fine.
Yep.
Sam Laporta, definitely fine.
Yep.
Hunter Henry, okay. Michael Meyer, okay.
Story's out. Yep.
Devin Funchess, no. Mike Gesicki, probably just barely checking the box.
Yeah.
And then Luke Musgrave, who so far has not checked that box. So that's about, it's about 50-50.
Yeah.
But that's I don't know. Do you think that would be a worthwhile pick? Loveland aside, at tight end at 32.
Well, here's the one thing, and this is why I said maybe.
Yeah.
So I did that exercise. I did that mock draft last week where it was the crowdsourced mock draft where I basically sampled 36 different mock drafts from the top analysts since the season ended. So it's your Daniel Jeremiah's, your Matt Miller, or your Mel Kipers, your Dane Bruglers, like all the best of the best, right? And basically just
notice you didn't include Fran Duffy in there.
My mocks were in there.
Okay.
They were in there. So you have your sample, 36 mock drafts. How many mock drafts did Tyler Warren make it to the Eagles at 32?
0.
How many did Colston Loveland make it to the Eagles?
3.
0. Yeah, I don't think that Loveland will be there. I think that there are a number of teams where whether it's Indianapolis at 14, whether it's Denver at 20. Those are the teams I think are most often linked. The floor seems to be the Chargers at I think they're 22. Those are the teams where it feels like he's going to end up. Yes. And
that's pretty high.
Yeah.
I liked him.
Yep.
There's definitely, from what I could see, an athletic drop off from Tyler Warren. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
The profile to me is really nice.
No
he's
question.
Young, is productive, all that stuff. I think, if he were there at 32 and your Walter Nolans were off the board, I actually think it would be a fine pick for the Eagles at 32. I think it would make sense, but I'm not blown away by the player. How about you, Zach?
Yeah, I liked him. When I watched him, I thought of Zach Ertz. That's the player who jumped to mind. And again, this will probably come up a few times today, that sometimes I tend to be persuaded or kind of colored by like the high water marks. And there was a game against Oregon. It was the weekend of the Eagles-Jags game. I remember it was daylight savings. And he was awesome. He was awesome that game. I was trying to look up the numbers here, and it turned out that was his best game, right? So, of course, I'm judging him based on his – he had 7 catches, 112 yards. But the Michigan offense was not good this year.
No.
Their quarterback play was atrocious. J.J. McCarthy was not there, of course. And watching him that game, it reminded me a lot of like Zach Ertz when the Eagles didn't have other receivers and they were just kind of throwing him the ball. He was he plays well in space. I feel like he's a similar body type. Coming out, he's from Idaho. He didn't have like the helium, if you will, as some other like big time tight end prospects who might go to Michigan. But he's someone I remember the early reports when he got to Ann Arbor. It's like, wow, this guy could be really good. And you mentioned the age profile. There's a few other guys like that. I think his best football's ahead of him. So I do like Colston Loveland.
Yeah, it's funny you say Ertz because I mentioned Dalton Kincaid as like my comp. Yeah. My comp for Kincaid was Ertz. So I definitely see the archetype.
And Ertz was a funny pick at the top of the second round. I mean, he did not test very well athletically. It was very much about sort of precision, and I guess that that's what you saw. It turned out to be that it was like, this guy with leverage, like he's such a good route runner. You maybe don't see that quite route running precision yet. I mean, he's 21 years old. Yeah, you can grow into that.
But I don't see like he's a better route runner than most of the guys in this class. I would say Loveland, but not a guy where I'm like, oh man, he's a great collegiate route runner.
Okay, so if he's not your tight end 2, the player who is your tight end 2 is Elijah Arroyo from Miami. And I think this is an interesting conversation because would you rather, if you were the Eagles, would you rather have a guy in Loveland who is certainly less explosive than Arroyo, but an easier projection, this guy can play all 3 downs. Whereas Arroyo may be a little bit more of a specific type of player, a role player.
I actually think that Arroyo, his 3-down ability is underplayed a little bit.
Okay.
I do think that he can be moved and used as a blocker at the point. I mean, they used it. We talk about like the counter play that the Eagles run all the time where they're bringing the tight end around in the holes. He did that a lot, and he was pretty good at it for Miami. Now, is he a guy that I'm going to be blocking one-on-one with defensive ends at the point of attack? No, but neither is Loveland. Certainly not some of the other guys we're going to talk about as well later in the conversation. I think that Warren does it at a suitable level, but not at like this great level. So I think when you're looking at Arroyo, I do think that he's got the ability to be a serviceable blocker. But to me, like the value watching him athletically compared to Colston Loveland, I think Arroyo's got the edge. Same thing with Mason Taylor from LSU, some of these other guys. I think that he's got more vertical ability. What he can do with the ball in his hands, really, really impressive. Now, injuries have been the big issue.
Yeah, so if you are new to Elijah Arroyo, you have no idea. The story is he had very little production up until this year when he had 590 yards for Miami. So the question is, like, is he a Cam Ward creation?
I don't think he's a Cam Ward creation. I think he's just this guy. Just hasn't been able to stay healthy. He had 11 catches in his first 3 years. He only had 1 catch for 11 yards last year in 2023. So he was a non-factor for them coming in. And then I remember watching that Florida game and saying I was watching Cam Ward. I was like, oh man, like I can't wait to see more of this tight end. And you just see the big plays. Some of the numbers that stood out. He had a drop rate of 2% in his entire career. He only had one. I think he had 1 drop in his entire career. Now, low sample, but 1 drop in his whole career. Outstanding yards after catch numbers. He averaged 9 yards after the catch per reception last year. And typically when you see there's like a correlation between yards after catch and average depth of target,
right?
Shorter the closer to the ball that you get targeted, you're creating more yards after catch. He had a 90th percentile yards after catch number, but he had 30% of his targets were targeted deep down the field, so which is also 90th percent. So vertical throws, still a ton of yards after catch. I mean, this guy's a playmaker at the position. I think he's just got a dynamic quality that the other guys don't.
Of the 14 tight ends in the top of your list here, I mean, it's by far the best yards per catch of these guys. He's at 16.4. Nobody else is even above 13.5.
30% target rate deep downfield. Didn't drop one.
There's the catch he made along the sideline against Virginia Tech. That little extent, I mean, an unbelievable catch. Very dynamic, no doubt about it. What are your thoughts, Zach?
Yeah, so the lack of production. Yeah, he's your scouts guy. If you just started watching college football, like you mentioned, or you watch it casually, he would not jump out to you. Think about this: if Tyler Warren only played football in the month of October and November, okay, that's it. Like he didn't play the previous few years. He didn't play the college football playoffs. He didn't play the first month of the season. If he only played in October and November, he would still have nearly 2x the amount of catches that Arroyo had in his entire college career.
Yep.
I keep hearing Arroyo jumped onto the scene this year. He had 35 catches, right? Like let's not act like this is Kyle Pitts. But
yeah, you had me until then.
Yeah. So Arroyo, I trust Fran's judgment, and like guys who, Daniel Jeremiah, who I respect, Arroyo's really high up on Jeremiah's list. Bo put it well. Like, could this be a Cam Ward creation? Now, Miami didn't have good quarterback play in the years before this. Of course, Arroyo was injured, but he doesn't have the recruiting pedigree. He doesn't have like the early college career pedigree. He has 1 year of, I don't even say elite production, like solid production, good production. And then he has good measurements, but I have a harder time I'm trusting Fran here. I have a harder time getting behind him from my personal judgment relative to the other tight ends.
Yeah, so his season best, which was this year of 590 receiving yards. I've got that sample of all the elite tight ends over the past 14 years or so. That's obviously on the low end, but it's not disqualifying. Greg Olsen was at 490. Jason Witten was at 490. Jimmy Graham and Jordan Cameron basically don't count. And then you've got George Kittle, who was at 314, and he's a bit of an outlier as well. So, I mean, it would be a gamble.
Yeah.
And you're talking about probably this would be the second round for the Eagles. I can see the upside, and I mean he does look dynamic, but it would be risky. How would you? I mean, you like the player.
I like the player a lot.
But from a team building standpoint, how would you feel about that pick in the second round?
I mean, I would be excited by it. Yeah, I'd be excited by it. I think that you get him at 64. I think that's a bargain. I think that he is worth the risk at 64 overall.
He's not in my top 3. Like the guy, and I'm not sure if he's my number 4 either. But again, I trust Fran's judgment.
Well, so who's in your top 3? Who's the third guy for you?
The guy we'll talk about, Mason Taylor, is my number 3.
Okay, well, let's talk about Mason Taylor, who is not even your number 4, which is interesting. Fran,
he is now.
Oh, he is now. He's moved up.
He moved up. Yes. Well, why?
Okay, well, let's get to Mason Taylor then, because I think Mason Taylor is a player who I think the Eagles may be interested in and would be a potential pick at 64 or even earlier. 21 years old, from LSU. You know about the bloodlines. Jason Taylor's son. For whatever reason, you always have to then mention that he's also Zach Thomas's nephew. But okay. Mason Taylor. Now, not entirely explosive as a receiver. 10.1 yards per catch is a red flag in this sample. Would be lower than every other tight end except for Jordan Cameron, who doesn't really count. And so that's a concern. But a young player with production, why do you like him so much, Zach?
And just to clarify, because you're giving the age what it'll be when he plays this season, right? I mean, he doesn't turn 21 until May. On draft night, he's going to be 20. That shows the age profile. Again, for full disclosure here, I'm probably colored by the game that I watched him play. His best game of the season was when I was there in attendance, right? Okay. Against UCLA. And I watched him that day, and I remember I was sitting next to a scout, and I'm like, this guy's awesome. He reminds me of Dallas Goedert. That's what I said. And of course, I'm probably influenced by watching the Eagles too. But he just, the way he plays reminds me a lot of Goedert. I think that he catches the ball well. I think he has like a projectable frame. That frame at 20 years old, and if it continues to fill out, he's not. He doesn't jump off the screen athletically, but he just plays really well. Like he's reliable as a pass catcher. I'll defer to Fran in terms of the blocking. Like I know that's a part of his profile that can probably improve, but the size is there. I just thought that, and the other thing too is he's really good in the open field. That's what jumps out to me too. Is like Dallas Goedert. When you watched him at South Dakota State, you saw the yards after the catch. I think with Mason Taylor, you see some of those yards after the catch opportunities.
So here's my journey with Mason Taylor. So I went in, I knew the background. He came in as a big recruit and started right away. And I liked all right. So he goes to the SEC, became a year 1 starter as a true freshman. Loved that. He played a ton of football. I went in, and it might be the fact that he had 2 Hall of Fame defenders, in the bloodlines, right? I went in expecting all right, this guy's going to get after. He's going to be a 3-down player, and he's just not. I think that he is a guy you have to scheme around as a blocker. I'm worried about him at the point of attack, and talking with people, that have watched him as well, that have been through there, agree with that sentiment. That's a guy that you're not going to count on him to be a primary blocker for you in the NFL. Now, as I've watched more, one thing that stands out, the guy never puts anything on the ground. He's got really good hands. I thought he had one of the best position workouts at the combine. Athletically, he would be in that group where I'm good athlete, but not I don't think that he's a game-breaking matchup player. And that's to me the difference between he and Goedert would be Goedert You get him the ball in his hands. Like, I think he's like runaway train in the open field, can be a game breaker. I never really quite saw that with Taylor. Even on those underneath throws, like I think he's solid after the catch, but not something where I'm like, oh man, like this guy is so special in space. As a route runner, another one where I think he's kind of ordinary. Like he's got the ability to settle into soft spots, but not separating one-on-one in single coverage. Again, it's just a really good, reliable pass catcher, but not like that game-breaking mismatch type. Now, I felt the same way, and that's why like Taylor was really low for me going into the combine just after my first watch. And I felt the same way about Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta at Iowa, everyone thinks, oh, Iowa tight end, great blocker. No, Laporta stunk as a blocker in college. Like, was not good at the point of attack. Just was not good in that phase of his game. And I thought, all right, like you have to scheme around him. He's not going to be a guy that you can count on as a 3-down player. He's a backup. Well, the Detroit Lions take him in the second round, and what do? They scheme around him as a run blocker. He's not asked to be like this a quality blocker for them at the point of attack. They've actually pay a good blocking tight end over the last couple of years to make sure that he doesn't have to take on that stuff. I kind of feel Taylor the same way, and I brought him up. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. Dane, our friend Dane actually wrote down Laporta as his comp. Okay. I've talked with scouts that have used Laporta as the comp. So actually, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes me feel good. Taylor, I think, is a guy that, again, scheme around him. I think the production can be there, but I don't think that he's like a true game breaker. I think you kind of scheme him open.
The other interesting thing with Laporta here is I mentioned that low yards per catch, right?
Yeah.
So Laporta is the guy at the bottom of that sample in yards per catch, but I don't want to get too stuck on one thing. He's at 11.7. That was his college yards per catch. Again, Mason Taylor 10.1. I know. It's like it's a real drop off. Why is that? I mean, you had a good quarterback.
Yeah, he had a good quarterback certainly last year.
And then Jaden Daniels,
and also the red flag too. And this is a small. I'd be interested to get your thoughts here, Zach. Because I know you talk with people about this stuff. It comes up. 0 special team snaps in his career. That is always a red flag for me, because it's like, okay, like sometimes it's like, oh, like
he started as a true freshman.
He started as a true freshman, and that was kind of the way it was kind of sold.
Yeah, and LSU, like they would pump up the fact that he's the best tight end in school history. It's not a school that's really known for their tight ends. What's interesting to me, especially when you look at it last year, and I understand maybe this was because you lose Malik Neighbors, you lose Brian Thomas. They adjusted the way they played offense to get him more involved this year. If you look at the way they played when Jaden Daniels was there, even before Brian Kelly got to the school, they don't typically throw to their tight ends at the volume that they did Mason Taylor. And I think a lot of that had to do with the player. I'm influenced by what I saw and what I heard in the post-game press conference that day. That was one of the things Brian Kelly was talking about. You guys aren't used to seeing tight ends like this around here. I just think he's a really good football player. I know that there's a sentiment that he should be better athletically because Jason Taylor's his dad and because Zach Thomas is his uncle, maybe. But to me, you see the football instincts when he's out there. Like, you see this guy grow up around the game because he just knows how to play football.
I just want to say, for the production thing, Mason Taylor's best year is fewer yards receiving than your boy Elijah Arroyo.
Yeah, that's true. Now he had more catches, but yeah.
Yards matter more.
True. He was a higher volume player. Yeah.
Okay. I actually do think, just guessing, that he is the kind of player the Eagles are going to like. And I would not be surprised if he was a real possibility for them in the second round.
Yeah, and I could see it. I think it would just be, I would caution against this is the Dallas Goedert 1-for-1 replacement. Because that's the big thing. Like, Dallas Goedert, when he was at South Dakota State, he was their primary pass catcher. He was their Tyler Warren, right? But and he wasn't asked to block very often at all. But when he got after people. Like, there were really good flashes of him, exerting his will and running his feet. I've yet to. Someone could show me maybe one clip of Mason Taylor. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. Well, we're through 4 guys in 40 minutes. We got 10 more to get through. But we're going to take a quick break, come back. We've got a couple of super chats, and then we're going to go through the mostly day 3 guys, but one with an interesting tie to the Eagles. We start, however, with a word from our friends at Parks Casino. One thing that I love about Parks Casino is the Bet Parks app. All the games we love to play in person at Parks Casino, like pop culture slots, roulette, cards, dice games, and more, can also be played on the Bet Parks app. Parks Online Casino has the games you love, whether you're at home or on the go. And of course, when you're not at home or on the go, when you do make it out to Parks Casino, they've got the Excite Center at the Parks Casino where they've got all kinds of great events for you and the family. Download the Bet Parks app and create an account today to receive an offer you cannot pass up. New users are eligible to receive up to $1,000 back if you are down in the first 24 hours after signing up. Bet Parks Online Casino is available to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, and Michigan residents. Terms and conditions apply. Parks Casino, this is how you win. You must be 21 and over. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
We'll now hear from our friends at Empire today, because just like your favorite team needs that home field advantage, your home needs a home floor advantage. And Empire today, they can help you get it, because Empire today, they have flooring experts, dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. Because we've all been to the big box stores, you wander around the endless aisles, somehow you've run into somebody that, maybe today they're working in the flooring aisle, but yesterday they were working in plumbing, and the day before they were over in electrical. You wander those aisles, you run into somebody, then you're somehow hauling all of these materials out, and you're put them in the back of your car, you're taking them home, you got to find someone to install it, you're coordinating everything yourself. But when you handle Empire, you don't have to worry about things like that. And I could say, being a homeowner now, we're going on 10 years now, owning a home. I'm trying to figure out, what are my limitations in terms of being handy around the house. I remember one of the first big projects was our door jamb. I don't know if you guys ever handled fixing a door jamb, but it's that piece of wood where the door latches on, and I'm like, I can handle this. No big deal. Back and forth to the store. I never got that thing. I spent 2 days working on it, a day and a half, where I'm going back and forth. I just hire somebody else, hire the expert, bring them to the house, and they're able to correct it. Same thing here with Empire today. So why is Empire today your best bet for a new floor? They live and breathe flooring, and they will be with you every single step of the way. It's a whole different ball game. Their flooring experts bring the showroom right to your home. You pick the right floor and the right colors for your space. See how it looks with your furniture in your house. We know how important that is. You get those exact measurements. With Empire today, you get clear, upfront, and all-inclusive pricing. Plus, you can schedule an installation as soon as the next day. You don't have to wait anything longer. You can get to it at your earliest convenience. Schedule a free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. PHLY listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code PHLY. Yes, you heard that right. $350 with discounts there with the code PHLY. Restrictions apply. Visit Empire today/PHLY for full details.
All right, nobody has pounded the table yet. That's still on the board, which is fun. A couple of super chats to get to. Chase Daniel Plainview says, publicist disguised as journalist Peter Schrager, this is not my words, repeated McVay's tush-push talking points on ESPN. With Goff in Detroit, is Schrager McVay's number one puppet, Zach?
He coming in hot.
Peter Schrager was at Sean McVay's wedding, so I wouldn't even say puppet. I would say friend. Look. You can say what you want to. I like Peter, so I will defend Peter, but I don't think Peter makes bones about this. He's transparent about it. There's some guys who you say stump for people, and then you find out behind the scenes they're Peter Schrager will talk about how he's.
That's fair.
Chatting
I respect
with,
that, honestly.
yeah. So I think there's transparency there.
I agree with that.
Fresh Prince also has a question for Zach. He says, ZB, how do you feel about EJ saying that Olivia is Jeffrey Lurie's favorite on the beat? EJ said, your time has come to an end. My condolences.
I haven't listened to the end of that show. I think Olivia does an amazing job on covering the Eagles. I tell her that. I read her all the time. Well, Olivia's one of my favorite people on the beat.
You read everybody all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at my text message threads with Olivia, it's probably me at 6 a.m. saying great story today, right? And so if Jeffrey feels that way, then it would certainly be merited. I don't know how you qualify favorite. I hope Jeffrey respects us. I hope Jeffrey respects Olivia. All you want is the person to say you're covering the team fairly and professionally, and have that type of professional respect.
But is it fair to say that you came out of Palm Beach a little bit disappointed with your Jeffrey FaceTime?
Yeah, that's definitely fair to say. I was I was hoping to speak more to Jeffrey. Like, I don't see him very often. So this is an
Mostly it's
opportunity.
phone calls.
This is an opportunity to see him. There were a few things I wanted to discuss with him, and we just weren't. He was pretty
Ships
busy.
in the night.
He was pretty busy. But no, I think the world of Olivia's work.
Amen. All right, let's get to tight end 5. Harold Fannin Jr., the ultra-productive tight end from Bowling Green, 21 years old, 6'3", 241, and has that connection with the Eagles because his head coach was Scott Loeffler, who is the Eagles' new quarterbacks coach. This is a player who profiles Fran as, this is a move tight end, right?
Yep.
Not bringing a lot as a blocker. But I think a little disappointing combine. 4.73 for a guy who is billed as like a receiving first explosive guy is enough to make you a little bit wary. Is that fair?
Yeah, below average number for the tight end spot. Even like factoring in the size, that's still a below average number. If you're looking at the speed score, the explosive numbers less than what you would like. The production does speak for itself. You're looking at a 35% target share. That's higher than any tight end drafted in the last decade. Looking at their final year production, 2.99 yards per route run. That's higher than any tight end drafted in the last decade. 3.76 yards per route run last year, higher than any tight end in their final year. So all the production numbers are through the roof with Harold Fannin Jr. Doesn't put balls on the ground. I think he's a little bit tight athletically. He's more like straight line guy. I think there are some athletic limitations there, and that's why I do think he's probably more of like a round 3, round 4 type. I do think he could fall to day 3 potentially. I think that he's a little bit better as a blocker than given credit for.
Okay.
But at that size, at 6'3", 240, he's not going to be the best blocker. But I think he's a little bit better than given credit for.
I just want to clarify one thing here, okay? When the Eagles hired Scott Loeffler, there was a social media reaction like, put Fannin in your mock drafts now. Howie Roseman is not drafting Harold Fannin because their quarterbacks coach coached him. What he does, though, is he provides more information. Like, clearly Scott Loeffler will feature him in the offense.
Sure.
So it helps you get a fuller scouting report.
Yeah.
But the Eagles aren't going to run Bowling Green's offense next year, right? Like Scott Loeffler.
No, but you know what I did say from my takeaway was, maybe we're going to get a shovel pass back in the Eagles offense because there were a few Harold Fannin shovel passes.
True, that's a good point. But yeah, I think this helps with the information. But Scott Loeffler's the quarterbacks coach. Scott Loeffler's not like
Scott Loeffler's also not coming in the complex with the big stick and the draft room. It's like,
this isn't like Chip Kelly and Marcus Mariota.
Hoping to get called on in the corner.
Again, this isn't Chip Kelly and Marcus Mariota. Although I found it interesting. Speaking of that, of like the coach being called on in the corner, I saw the interview. I was jealous. Good job by John Clark. Did you see this with Vic Fangio?
No.
And so John Clark was asking Vic about the players that he lost, and Vic's like, we didn't just lose 5 players. We lost 3 of their top back or 3 of their backups too. or we didn't just lose 5 starters. We lost 3 of their backups too. He's like, but what this does is this gives me a reason to get on Howie. Right. And so like, I can imagine that Vic's going to be making his voice heard about guys that he likes, especially because if he was pounding the table for Jalix Hunt last year,
you're going to break your computer.
That pick worked out well.
Or your wrist. Your Aura ring. Anything.
Or my Aura ring. Yeah.
Jeez.
How do you feel about Harold Fannin Jr., Zach?
I liked him.
He's fun to watch.
Yeah, yes. He is fun to watch. Like you talk about volume, as you mentioned, that volume is there. When you talk about players from a lower level,
it's funny when you have the YouTube videos that are like every target, and you got like Harold Fannin Jr. like 20 minutes. Look at the Jackson Hawes, it's like 35 seconds.
But like when you're talking about lower school or like mid-level players, you want to see elite production.
Yeah.
That was one thing that I remember Joe Douglas talking about with Dallas Goedert, right? That was something the Eagles talked about with Quinion Mitchell. You're not going to take a guy from a smaller school who just has these great measurements but doesn't produce, because you should, in theory, produce when you're at a smaller school. And so the production is top-notch there. The size is underwhelming, relatively speaking. But, yeah, I certainly like the player.
Yeah, I think that it's a tough value proposition because if you're using a 3rd-round pick on the guy, you want him to be able to play every down at tight end. Are you using a 3rd-round pick on a part-time player at tight end? And if that's the case, why wouldn't you just take a wide receiver who probably has more athletic upside? That's why it would be tough for me to think the Eagles would make this move in round 3.
Yeah, I think that his blocking is a little bit undersold.
Yeah.
I was actually pretty impressed with what he did. Again, at 6'3", 240, he's not going to be putting his hand in the dirt and blocking the ends. But I think that he can, for the things that we didn't see from Grant Calcaterra last year, I think he's better in that role than what Calcaterra showed.
Okay. All right. Next up, your tight end 6, Jake Brenningstool from Clemson. A bunch of red flags on the profile, starting with the fact that it's pronounced Brenningstool, even though there's one N. I mean, it's very clearly spelled Brenningstool, but pronounced Brenningstool.
Yeah.
Don't love that. From Clemson, 10.9 yards per catch, so that's a red flag. 31.5-inch arms, red flag. 8 and 5-inch hands. Why can't I say inch? It's red flag. 4.75 40, red flag. 31-inch vert, red flag. Not great, but 17 touchdowns. I mean, he's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Interesting player in the red zone. Sort of one of those guys where it was like, because he was a multi-year starter, same level of production, but clearly a part of that offense. What do you like about Brenningstool?
Yeah, I mean, we got to see a pretty large sample stool from Brenningstool.
Look what you did there.
Just because
I don't think we need to be talking about large stools.
Look, to me, he is the Mike Gesicki type of player where he's kind of like he's a big receiver. I don't think he brings a ton of value as a blocker, but I think that the athleticism is there. He's the loose, slow type of guy at the point of attack, but a very smooth, fluid athlete. I did expect him to test a little better than he did. The jumps were very unimpressive, but look, he ran 4.75 with a 1.6 10-yard split. That checks the box there. But I think at 240, you were just hoping for a little bit more. But to me, I look at he's more of a high-end, like number 2 tight end that's like a pass catcher primary as opposed to like a low-end starter.
Yeah, this would, I think, support your premise at the top of the show that like maybe this class is being inflated because look, you don't typically have 2 first-round picks at your position. So top of class is really good. But on Fran's board, there's a drop-off here when you look at projected round.
Right.
And I feel like this is kind of where a drop-off might be because to me, he's fine. But, if we're doing the show and they take Brenningstool, I'm not like, wow, great pick.
Yeah, I think this is where it levels out. Like, I don't particularly see a huge difference between Brenningstool and the next 10 guys.
This is where
that's why I'd be happy if they draft one of those guys in the 5th or 6th round, and it's a relatively small level, and it's like a 4th round caliber player. But I wouldn't want the top of that class.
But that said, too, I mean, this is just based off my opinion.
Sure,
there are some people that like Terrence Ferguson. There are some people that like Gunnar Helm. Like there are some people that there are fans out there for some of these other players,
including one that's coming up that we'll discuss.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. All right. Well, next up for you, Fran, is Jackson Hawes.
Yep.
Who's, I believe, 45 years old. And had 4 catches in his career.
The fact that you are bringing that up, knowing some of the players you're going to bring up later,
it's about value. All right, he's 20. He will be 23 as a rookie. His season best, 195 yards, 0 touchdowns. Also has relatively short arms and ran a 4.83. But I do have to say, I mean, he's fun to watch. And this is a guy who you like just because you think he can be an absolute blocking dominator.
Yeah, like he is like we talked last year about they need that kind of presence at in the tight end room. Jackson Hawes, you're not drafting to be a starter. You're drafting him to be that number 2, number 3 dominant tight end blocker. And I look around the NFL and I see these guys still get paid pretty decent contracts. I think of like what the Minnesota Vikings gave to Josh Oliver a couple of years ago. I looked to Luke Farrell, the deal that the San Francisco 49ers gave, nearly $7 million a year. Luke Farrell got from the 49ers this past year. Will Dissly with the Chargers last year, $5 million. Ian Thomas got $6 million from Carolina a couple of years ago. So Brock Wright in Detroit, that's the reason why they can have Laporta, is because you have Brock Wright making this money, right? So I think when you look at that level of player, I definitely think Jackson Hawes can fit that bill. He's going to be 5th, 6th round type of player would be my estimation.
One of Joe Rockhead's grandmother's 21 kids, I believe.
For the purpose of time, we can keep rolling until there's a guy that I really like. I mean, I can give you my skinny on him, but I think Fran covered it well.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get then to Terrence Ferguson from Oregon. 6'5.5", 247. Had a pretty good level of production. 591 yards this past season, over 1,500 yards total, 16 touchdowns. No red flags in the profile. I didn't think he was pretty meh to me, but he can do it. He can do a little bit of everything.
He's athletic. He's got explosive traits. You kind of move him around. He can do some different things for you. I liked him best with the Eagles and Dallas Goedert. I love those little slide routes, like get him into the flat, get him the ball, and then that's where you could see him turn the corner. He's got some special yards after catch potential there in that way. I don't think he's a great route runner. I think he's an okay blocker. He does better like working against smaller bodies out in space than he does like putting his hand in the ground and blocking the DN. But I think that there's some potential there. Of the guys in this group, I would say Ferguson has the best shot at being a 3-down starter.
Okay.
I do think in this group, he's got the best shot at it.
I liked him more than Fran does. I'm based on Fran's rankings, right? I mean, I think he's a good player. And you look at the 2 Ohio State games, I thought when you play Ohio State, that's, and you belong on the field, that says something. He belonged on the field in both those games. That jumped out to me. You look at the athletic testing, 39-inch vert. That screams, right? Like that screams your athletic profile. He was the fastest tight end at the combine, right?
But the other guys, a lot of the guys
didn't test. But I'm saying of the guys,
4.63 is a solid time.
Yeah, but if you're 6'6", like 6'6", 250, you run a 4.63 and you have a 38-inch vert, that plays, right? So, and then you add that in with production at a good program, and again against the best competition, he looked like he belonged. If we're having that conversation, 3rd round, 4th round, and it's Ferguson, that's a pick I'd get behind.
Is this your table pounder?
No, that's not my table pounder.
Okay.
The table, look, of the guys we talked about, Mason Taylor's the guy, but then
we're talking about relative to
kind of the
relative to where they're
like the
going
polarizing guy late. There's gonna be a guy that I'm gonna pound the table on.
Okay.
And Fran won't be surprised.
I liked Higbee as a comparison for Ferguson in terms of I think he could be, and that's what I mean. Like of these guys that we're talking about, I do think he's got the best shot at being a 3-down guy. I just think you need to scheme him up a little bit.
Okay. Next up is a guy who I believe played with him for a year before transferring to UCLA. Moliki Matavao.
You got the second name right, Moliki.
Oh, Moliki
Matavao.
Oh. I worked on Matavao.
At least on the pronunciation guide.
Okay. Bigger player.
Yep.
260.
Yes.
Ran a 4.83. Had a pretty good level of production. I kind of like him. When I got to him, I was like, oh, this might be my guy. And then two players kept going. That became more of my guys. But I like him. I actually think that there is potential 3-down upside here because I think he brings a little bit downfield more than you would like. And I think I like what I saw. And from a beefiness standpoint and a willingness, I think he can be a starting caliber blocker.
Yeah, I thought that he was more of your primary blocker as opposed to a primary pass catcher. I thought he was kind of an unimpressive athlete. Even in person, seeing him at Mobile, seeing him at Combine, wasn't blown away by the movement there. I think he can get held up by press coverage. I wasn't wowed by him as a route runner after the catch. I thought he was a little bit slow to transition into a runner, but firing off the ball and blocking defensive ends, I thought he did a nice job there. Okay. So I did like Matavao.
I like him. Yeah, I'm talking like a 6th round pick. I think I could get behind him.
Yep. Yeah. Agree.
Okay. Make sure you tune in for overtime as we continue to go through these guys. We got more to come. All right. Next up, Gunnar Helm. From Texas. Is this going to be your guy, Zach? 6'4", 241, 12.9 yards per catch, 786 last season. Some red flags in the athletic profile, but Gunnar Helm, not your guy, Zach.
No, not my guy.
Oh, I know who you guys going to be. All right, interesting. How do you feel about Gunnar Helm?
I think I'm a little lower.
I was watching these guys late last night, and Gunnar Helm is the one who almost put me to sleep.
Really?
Is it the 4.9, 240?
Well, so he did do that on a he sprained his ankle.
They made sure the agent made sure he sent the picture to Rap Sheet so everyone knows.
Hey,
so
I mean,
no, you gotta get that out there.
You gotta get that out there. I mean, it's pretty crazy. At the end of the day, instead of the agent taking the picture of the ankle, tell the kid not to run. Just keel over. But when you're looking at Gunnar Helm, primary pass catcher, only 1 year of production. He was behind JT Sanders and some of those other guys in that Texas program last year. So he took over this year as a starter, was a special teamer before that. He's athletic, but not in a dynamic way.
Yeah.
I didn't love the overall skill set. I don't think that he's the test that athleticism as bad as what the testing showed. But I think that overall, solid pass catcher, okay route runner, not much of a blocker. I thought he was like a tight end 3-4 person.
Yeah. Didn't move the needle for me. All right, I'll tell you who did move the needle for me. This guy is my number 2 guy, not the one I'm going to pound the table for.
Oh, really?
And shout out to Cousin Grace. Gunnar Helm was putting me to sleep. Gavin Batholomew woke me up, man.
Really?
Yeah. The way he's like,
I love this.
trying to run guys over.
Yeah.
I want my tight end to have a screw loose. That's what he looked like to me. You know, I'm not going to overvalue the fact that he's a captain, but I kind of like that for a guy. I mean, not a crazy level of production. Another one of those guys who like under Brenningstool was like the same level each year, but he's a multi-year starter.
Yep.
But
Played with Pickett.
Played with Pickett. Yeah, there you go. But he's only 22 will only be 22 years old. He's a guy who's like, he's fighting for every yard. He's trying to run guys over. He's the kind of guy who I bet that like there are going to be some scouts who fall in love with him because of just the play personality.
Yeah, played quarterback late in his career in high school. So made the move obviously to tight end. Became a 4-year starter there, and I know some people at Pitt, and they all everybody raves about him. So I think that there's a lot to like there. I would say, tools wise, left me wanting. I think that there's not one area. I would say he's a better blocker than pass catcher, but even as a blocker, I wasn't like completely blown away. All the production numbers are really bad from like an efficiency standpoint. So nothing impressive there.
He's probably a number 3 tight end. You're hoping,
but I
like that.
Jack Stoll. Like he could be Jack Stoll.
Yeah,
I can see that.
All right, let's get to your guy. I'm guessing.
Yeah, let's do it.
Are we going homerism here?
It's not homerism.
Syracuse.
This is
Ronda Gadson,
pounding
the
table.
second
Football
former
guy.
wide receiver.
Yeah.
Turn tight end. Pound it.
You want to give your scouting report
No,
first, and
I
then I'll get my pitch?
We got to pound that bad boy.
Where's the camera? This is the camera here? Okay.
It is a camera.
Let me the camera I'm looking into. All right. Okay. For all you Eagles fans who once wanted Johnny Wilson to play tight end, okay? For all you Elijah Arroyo fans who watched that Syracuse-Miami game and you're wondering, which of these tight ends is the day 2 guy? Okay. For all you Harold Fannin Jr. fans who says, you know what? He might not be a blocker, but man, this guy can be electric in the passing game. Let me tell you about a Ronda Gadson II. You're not bringing him on your team to block, but look, this is a passing game, and he makes contested catches every single week. Like if you watch if you just watch the highlight reel, which contested catch do you like the best? It's like deciding which Saquon Barkley run do you like the best. Because what he does when he goes up to get the ball, he comes down with the ball. Like I kept hearing, what if you put Johnny? Like I said, what if you put Johnny Wilson at tight end? That's what Syracuse did. They moved the Ronda Gadson from wide receiver to tight end, and all he was one of the best tight ends in the country from a receiving perspective. He jumps out, literally, he jumps up and catches the ball. You think converted wide receiver, great athletically. That's not what jumps out to me. Like it's he doesn't have the game breaking. He doesn't have the game breaking.
The appeal of a wide receiver moving to tight end is a great athlete. That's not what we've got here.
That's not what you got here. But what you got is someone who makes contested catches, like strong hands, comes down with the ball, big catch radius,
long arms,
like similar to his father in that regard, and the guy who he reminds me of when I watch him is Darren Waller. Okay, Darren Waller, who similarly moved. He waited till the NFL to do it. Was a big body wide receiver at Georgia Tech. Comes to the NFL. The Ravens move him from wide receiver to tight end. Syracuse just did it earlier, and so Gadson. I'm not saying Gadson's better than Tyler Warren or Colton or Colston Loveland, but what I'm saying is
Elijah
that
Arroyo, though.
what I'm saying is that day 3, like what more do you want to see from a guy who just has consistent production against Syracuse beat Miami, knocked Miami out of the playoffs, right? And when you watch that game, just go back and watch it and tell me which of these tight ends you say like this guy's gonna have a big role in the NFL.
Just for the record, I will let you get to it. Just for the record, Darren Waller, who was a 6th-round pick, was 6'6". Gadson is under 6'5". Darren Waller ran a 4.46 and had a 37-inch vert and a 125-inch broad jump. Gadson only did the broad, 114 inches. And to me, does not look like a special athlete. But go ahead.
I know some people on that staff, and they moved him from wide receiver to tight end. They like being able to move around. He's really good at the catch point. Doesn't put a lot of balls on the ground. He's a great jump ball guy. Not a good route runner, and also like he was a guy that get him the ball and he is going to the ground immediately.
Didn't stop Zach Ertz.
Yeah, to Zach's point, you would expect as the former receiver that he's going to be this great athlete. I don't think that he's a great athlete. I don't think that he's got next level, like in terms of for the type of player he is, he's not the level of athlete that he needs to be in order to make it, if that makes sense. Yeah, to me, like I expected a little bit more juice. Personally, that's seeing him live at the Shrine Bowl. That's seeing him work out at the Combine. I thought it was just okay in both spots. He's not going to give you a ton as a blocker. I don't love him as a route runner. I think he's pretty poor as a route runner, honestly. I expected more as a former receiver. So at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, not a great route runner, not a great athlete, not a great blocker, not great yards after catch. He's good at the catch point, but that's where I kind of look at him as more of like a fringe roster. Like, all right, like maybe he can make it like Tyree Jackson level of bet. Jackson's a bigger body, but you got to kind of get the sense of how I kind of view the player.
Yeah, I totally respect Fran Duffy.
You don't need to,
and this is kind of the consensus among draft evaluators. These awful routes that he ran, he ran awful routes on 73 catches for 934 yards, right? Like to me, and then it wasn't just 1 year production, right? I mean, so he had the injury 2 years ago. Before that, when he moved to tight end, 61 catches, 969 yards. So for someone who doesn't run well and doesn't run good routes, he certainly catches a lot of passes and has a lot of production against good competition.
Okay. You got your table pound.
That's it.
I'm ready to give you my table pound.
I love it. Let's hear it.
Once upon a time.
Here we go.
I castigated the Baltimore Ravens for using a first-round pick on an old tight end from South Carolina.
Mm.
They didn't need to use a first-round pick. They could have just waited 10 years and used a 6th or 7th round pick on my guy, an old tight end from South Carolina, Joshua Simon. I love Joshua Simon. Very explosive to me. You're looking for a guy who's got real upside in the passing game. I see that in Joshua Simon. He is 6'4", 239. Scored 24 touchdowns. It was a long career, but he had a bunch this season.
Yeah,
38-inch vertical jump. That's the third best in my sample after Vernon Davis and who's my other guy? Jimmy Graham. Seems pretty good. The other guys in the league who have had that, we're talking explosive guys like Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, Jonnu Smith, Tyler Conklin. I like Joshua Simon a lot. I know you haven't done him yet, Fran.
I did him this morning.
You did him this morning? Tell me about it. I can't wait to hear.
Yeah,
I have him one slot
long
ahead. I have him one slot ahead of Gadson.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, I'm with Bo here, by the way. The age profile worries me, but yeah.
We're talking about a late round pick, but
a lot of the production this year was he's not a great route runner. He's a guy that you have to scheme open a lot of underneath stuff where it was honestly, I saw the same route like 35 times. Where it was, I don't know if you remember, but it was like he was lined up as a wing. He would step inside like he was going to block the defensive end and then step immediately out and catch the ball 2 yards in the flat underneath and then try and turn the corner. That was a lot of his catches this year. Outside of that, it was like shallow crosses, over routes, little pop passes. They schemed a lot of things up for him. I don't think that he's a natural separator. Good hands, good yards after catch, unsteady inline presence as a blocker. I don't think that he's going to give you a ton there, but I thought he was a pretty good athlete. I liked him more athletically than I liked Gadson. I have him
running away from guys in the SEC.
Yeah, similar archetype of player as Gadson. I liked him a little bit more. I actually have him in Gavin, your other boy, Gavin Batholomew, like all in the same kind of bucket.
He's break a lot of tackles as well.
Yes, he runs through arm tackles well. He and Hayden Hurst probably came in at the same time.
I'm so touched that you did it.
Yeah, no, I wanted to make sure. I was like, all right, well, if this is going to be Bo's guy, I want to make sure I knock him out.
All right. I love it. Now, who's your guy?
So similar kind of player, old, 7th-year senior. I'm one-upping you.
Oh, my gosh.
25 years old. We're going to go Brant Keithy from All right, so Brant Keithy. This is a unique profile. 6'2", 236 pounds. He's more of like your H-back type. I first studied Brant Keithy back in the 2021 season. That year, he was Utah's #1 tight end ahead of Dalton Kincaid. When he first got into school, he was the guy in that offense. Kincaid was the backup. Keithy tears his ACL. I believe it was a torn ACL that first year. Yeah, so tore his ACL in September of 2022. That's when Kincaid takes over. He becomes the guy, becomes a first-round pick. So he misses all of 2022. The following season, then that next summer, I have no idea what this is, but he developed what is called a cyclops lesion on the then repaired ligament, which then severely limited his mobility, required a knee scope, and he missed the 2023 season. So complications from the surgery from ACL cost him basically 2 seasons. Comes back for 2024 and was a part-time player this past year. So 5 starts in 9 games. Didn't finish the season. Ended up missing the last half due to an injury that cost him the All-Star game process. Didn't work out at the combine. So medically, huge red flag here for Keithy. Now, that said, you get to the film. I was worried, all right, is this guy going to lose the juice that he had early on in his career that I watched in 2021? Is that still going to be there? No, he actually still had good athleticism, really smooth in and out of breaks, has not lost that fluidity at all after all the injuries. It's still all there on tape. He was used on play action deep throws, like down the field, running double moves. This guy's got the ability to separate. One of the better route runners in this class, really good at the catch point for the most part, rare usage yards after catch wise. Like, to me,
wow,
this guy is healthy. He is the one that's going to like make it. I compared him to like Dawson Knox on now players with Kincaid, which is ironic. But to me, like, he's got that ability to be an impact role player at the position. He's just going to be 25 years old, and you got to worry about the name.
You certainly do, based on the Google image that Julia told me not to do for a cyclops lesion.
Oh, let's take a look. Ooh, yeah, that's oh, yeah. Yeah. I didn't see that one. Yeah, I didn't. He's a good player, though. I really, and as a blocker too, like, he will get after guys. To me, he's a better blocker than some of the other players that we've talked about. He'll get after people on counter and put his hand in the dirt and block people. So the size, he's very small. He's very old. He's very injured. But we're talking about the day 3 dart throws.
Okay.
I like a Brand Keithy.
Go ahead.
No, there were 2 other tight ends who I would just highlight.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Luke Lachey from Iowa. There's other guys. Yeah.
I think Luke Lachey. It's hard not to scout the jersey when you're thinking Iowa tight end, but I thought he was okay.
But he's someone who he had production early in his career. Had an injury, NFL pedigree. His father was a 10-year player at offensive line in the NFL. And then the other guy
uncle was Nick Lachey.
And that wasn't Nick Lachey.
Oh.
And then Thomas Fiddown from Nebraska,
Yep.
I think has a little more juice. Now, if you follow recruiting, he was once the top recruit in the country.
I thought this was going to be one of your guys.
He was once the top tight end in his class.
Yep.
He was like, it was a big deal when he decided to go to Nebraska. He's from Iowa, Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is I've actually stayed in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Nice casino there. Yeah.
Close to anywhere.
It's right across the river from Omaha. So it's actually more of like a Nebraska city than it is in Iowa. Well, it's an Iowa city, but it's basically like part of Omaha.
But it's not in Iowa City.
No, but it's kind of like, it's like Camden and Philly, right? It's part of like that metropolitan area. So I stayed at Spring Hill in Council Bluffs, right across the river. I was there for Nebraska football game. And the night before, I was looking for something to do. I just had a steak dinner. I went to the casino.
Real man's evening.
Won $120 that night. Walked away. Very specific, right? I had a walk-away number. Yes.
That was the number?
No, my number was 100, and I split. I split a $20 hand, and won both of them, and picked up and walked away. But that has nothing to do with Thomas Fiddown.
True.
Thomas Fiddown was a big recruit. Yep. Dealt with some injuries early on. This past year, I actually thought he showed some flashes. That's a guy. The Eagles have good connections to the Nebraska program. How he knows Matt Rule. He's just someone that I would pick to.
Okay, I like that. A couple super chats to get to before we decide which player we think is the most likely Eagle. We'll start with Idiot Sandwich, who says, "What is Harold Fannin's ceiling, Fran? Is Jordan Reed?"
I don't think he's quite as athletic as Jordan Reed was. I would say like the one guy, especially from like a body type standpoint, I would say like a Jonnu Smith might be the peak, but I think that would probably be the peak.
From Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Sirianni's Book Talk says, going to Arizona State for school, not a college football guy, but dipped my toes this year for fun. Can you break down Cam Scattaboo, NFL likelihood / outlook?
I feel like I'm on the PHNX show. We're going to talk about him every single week there.
We're going to do running backs tomorrow on the show, but we can get one from you ahead of time.
I think Scattaboo is probably better as like a change of pace type of option there. I like the way he runs. I love the way he runs. There are physical limitations. There's a reason why he was a 0-star recruit coming out of high school. That there are physical limitations there. He's not super explosive. He's not the biggest. He has maxed out his frame. He's really strong. But yeah, I think they're just more of a change of pace guy.
Good for you going to Arizona State. I enjoy Mill Avenue. Yeah, there's some good restaurants there.
Oh, that's you like the restaurants at Arizona State?
On Mill Avenue? Yeah. I love the restaurants.
Billy is losing it.
What?
There was nothing else that made you.
Well, the football stadium's right there.
Oh,
yeah.
Good for you for going to Arizona State. Good for you.
Yeah, and a great journalism school, the Cronkite School of Journalism, right there. Actually, the last time the Eagles played against the Cardinals, I stayed on Tempe's campus. And I stayed on Arizona State's campus. I went to an ASU football game against Washington, saw Michael Penix play, and then as I was walking back, I walked right past the Cronkite School of Journalism. Good school.
How's the student union there in Tempe?
It was I walked in. There was too much like football stuff going on that day. They had I guess alumni and you couldn't really sit there. I did go to the school store, got Sloan something there right there. But nice student union right on the walk from the Westin in Tempe to Sun Devil Stadium.
Speaking of Arizona State, one more tight end.
Okay.
Former Arizona State who started his career at Oklahoma, went to ASU, then transferred to Texas Tech. Jalen Conyers, redshirt senior, a little bit older. He was a part-time quarterback at Arizona State in 2023. Moved to tight end full-time for Texas Tech last year. Caught my eye at the Shrine Bowl. Also an ALLCITY alum. Did some work with our PHNX crew out there as well. But Conyers,
I cannot believe how deep we've gone on tight ends. This is fantastic.
Well, that's why this is a deep class once you get to this part.
Yeah,
for sure. But Conyers, he looks like a draftable player to me. 6'5.5", 260 pounds, good-looking wingspan, catches everything. I thought he was a sharper route runner than I expected coming in. I was impressed. I haven't done as deep of a film dive on him as I'd like to, but I will definitely be getting to him before draft weekend.
All right, let's figure this out. Of all these guys, who projects Eagles to you?
To me, Mason Taylor.
Yeah.
Because I think the draft range, the age profile, the playing style. Mason Taylor is one that jumps out to me.
Yeah, I mean, if it would be a different conversation if we're thinking about like the day 3 guys who fits. Would they like as much as you like him? I don't think that they would use a pick on a Jackson Hawes. It might be more of the Terrence Ferguson type, but I think if they're going to draft one early, I think I would go Mason Taylor as kind of their type.
Yeah, I think he checks most of the boxes that you're looking for there. I think that Arroyo would make some sense as well, just because he's got a little bit of an unusual skill set there in terms of those traits. I think that they are exceptional, whereas some of the other guys not as much. But I would put Taylor as probably the most likely of that group in terms of range. Made that point.
I would say this: in a draft with this much talent on the lines of scrimmage, there would need to be a major run on O lineman, D lineman for the Eagles to take a tight end in the first round. Right? Like I just think there's at the positions they prioritize, there's going to be such a combination of value and priority from my perspective. Unless it was like last year, there was that run on offensive linemen. And this year, the same thing could happen. I just think there's more likely to be a D lineman or an O lineman that jumps off the board at 32 if they draft at 32 than a tight end.
At 32.
At 32. Yes, that's why I think it's more likely we're talking round 2, round 3 for a tight end.
I would be surprised if either of the top 2 guys made it that far. I think it's more like could it be what it was when they took Goddard, when they trade back a little bit, and that's where you take Mason Taylor at 42 or something, potentially.
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy. I mean, it's literally what they did last time they won the Super Bowl. So
Right.
maybe they'll think they're going to do it again. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I did some work on that draft, and the roster, as we kind of discussed yesterday, was different then, right? They didn't have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. The Eagles went into that draft really hoping to get an offensive weapon with their top pick.
Right. They wanted an offensive player.
Yeah. So like wide receiver, tight end, running back, they were considering all three of those. They were looking for a player. From their perspective, they had this young quarterback. They wanted someone who can grow with Carson Wentz. That was the reason. They actually liked Christian Kirk in that draft, but the Eagles traded back. Then they moved up because if early day 2 there was a run on wide receivers, tight ends, so they traded up to make sure they got
to get ahead of Dallas, I believe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right. There you go. Good stuff, everybody. Anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, one quick thing here. Just news that we're getting 80 minutes in. It's very small news. So it doesn't really matter.
That band.
No. Well, I suppose that is news.
What the hell, man? That budget line item, was that important?
The Eagles announced their offseason schedule today.
Oh.
Okay. And they have 1 day of mandatory minicamp. So last year they had mandatory minicamp for the first time under Nick Sirianni. The previous 3 years had been canceled. They are having one this year, but only 1 day. Last year they scheduled 3 days. Then they have 6 OTAs scheduled. So last year they had 7 OTAs scheduled and 3 days of mandatory minicamp scheduled. This year, 6 OTAs, 1 day of mandatory minicamp. So the mandatory minicamp is a change from the last time that they were in the Super Bowl. They did not have that. The Eagles still have they're the only team in the NFL with only 1 day scheduled. Every team is at least 2. Part of this might be because of the how long the season went.
For
also,
sure.
the regular season starts earlier this year too, just the way the calendar falls. So the Eagles open the season on September 4th. Okay, which means they're going to be reporting the training camp like July 20 something, like early July 20 something, right? Not late July this year. So everything's kind of pushed up because of when Labor Day falls. Labor Day is early September. But anyways, the Eagles have 6 OTAs. I'll give you just the exact date for those who want to keep track of this. And it is the workout. The Eagles have OTAs on May 27th, May 28th, May 30th, June 2nd, June 3rd, and June 5th. And mandatory minicamp is June 10th. So circle that June 10th show schedule because that's going to be a fun one. It's also the day before Bo's birthday. So we can make sure we wish Bo, or the Eagles are off on Bo's birthday. So we can make sure that we wish Bo a happy birthday.
There you go. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I have one other thing I want to talk about. You like a pear?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's a nice addition to a charcuterie board.
Okay.
What a waste of a pear.
Waste? No, you can combo with some nice sharp
It's okay,
cheese.
yeah.
I like a pear with
Pear and cheese is not bad.
Yeah, I like pears, but you have to eat it at the right time.
Oh, for
Right,
sure.
yes,
Right?
I get that,
Too
yes.
hard, not
You don't
very
want a mealy
good.
pear, yeah.
Yeah.
Too mushy, not good. Yeah. Emily's been getting the green pears as opposed to brown pears.
Interesting. This is what I want to talk
Are
about.
they Asian pears? Is that what?
Oh,
which-
that's a totally different type of pear.
okay. Whatever, she got this like jumbo pear recently.
The Asian pear is fantastic.
It was awesome. Like this thing
Yeah.
was, now
It's much crisper.
the cutting board was like real wet from like all the, like I was cutting this up. It was a juicy pear, but it was good.
This is the kids have been very into the pears. Love the pears.
Yeah.
And we had been going mostly with the Bosch. I don't know if it's Bosch or Bosque. The brown pears,
I think it was Bosch.
which are very good and certainly superior to the Bartlett pear. And I love the Asian pear. I've always been a fan
Let's
of the
keep
Asian
politics
pear.
out of it.
However,
The Bartlett pear, you get it?
yeah, I don't think that this was the time, but you know what? It's okay. But what I had never had before and happened upon because the brown pears were out the other day, the red pear. Fantastic. I was not familiar with your game, red pear. I highly recommend the red pear. I've never had one before. Delicious. Maybe the top of the ranking.
Really? Oh, I don't think I've had a red pear, so I'm gonna have to grab one.
Yeah.
All right.
Highly recommend. I was a little bit skittish. Really delivered.
Yeah. I
So
gotta
there's
try
my
it too.
recommendation for you.
Okay.
It was nice being back. I feel like the three of us haven't had a show together in a
Yeah.
while.
I know.
Yeah, it's just fun.
Nice.
This is fun. And draft season. This is a great time for the PHLY Eagles show. I thought last year we had a great draft season, and this year we got the preeminent draft expert as part of the show. So it's awesome.
Well, top 2.
No, I'm a huge Fran guy. Look, I got to say, I haven't been as familiar with Fran's work in the past because he hasn't put out the type of information that he has now. Now that he's putting out more information, I wasn't on the back channel.
He's doing,
email.
guys. He's putting out.
No, I think you had more access to Fran's scouting reports in the past than I have, right? I haven't had that. So now that I get access to these, it's amazing. So Fran's my number 1.
There you go. All right, good stuff, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow talking running backs as we continue our series of position previews heading into the draft. For Julia, Fran, and Zach, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you love the draft talk, make sure you check out the PHLY Draft Show with Fran Duffy from today. Talked about some superlatives. We'll be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock for all of us here. Thanks for watching. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.